You're listening to the Fit Bottom Girls podcast, the only podcast for active, athletic, and adventurous women and those who aspire to be. We've got your back as you navigate the ups and the downs of motherhood, midlife, and menopause. I'm your host, Allison Hylett, here to remind you that female isn't fragile. I'm a strength, conditioning, and nutrition coach who's trained hundreds of women to achieve their goals to get fit, lift heavy, go the distance, and feel like a badass in every area of their lives. Each week, you'll hear from me and some of our awesome guests as we educate and empower you during each stage of your fitness journey, whether you're already crushing it, fighting to get back out there, or starting from day one. So friends, let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fit Bottom Girls podcast. Today's episode involves a topic that is such an important one for me personally and for my midlife clients, and that is the impact of alcohol on midlife women and their mental health. The hormonal changes and fluctuations that come with the menopause transition, or what we like to call perimenopause, for many women can lead to an increase in anxiety and depression symptoms. Then you add in the fact that many women's plates get fuller and fuller the deeper into their careers and or motherhood that they go. Plus, women are often also expected to care for their aging parents. So it becomes a perfect storm, this intersection of menopause hormone fluctuations, high performance at work, and personal obligations at home and within our communities. On a personal note, I've been sober for almost 5 years, and that shift towards sobriety has helped me actually face the mental health issues that my alcohol use was masking for a long time. Giving up alcohol was actually the beginning of my journey toward better mental health as I moved through perimenopause. So with me today is Krywko, a sobriety coach, educator, mixed media creator, and the founder of Purple Dog Sober. Krysty uses creativity as a tool in the recovery process, and this is the magic that sets her apart from other sobriety coaches. Her framework becomes an alternative coping mechanism that women can adapt to their daily lives and their routines. This is such an important conversation, so let's get into it. Welcome, Krysty. Thanks so much for being here.
I'm so thrilled to be here and to have this conversation, so thank you.
I am so flippin' excited to talk to you today because we are talking about the impact of alcohol on midlife women and their mental health. And as a midlife woman myself, and as a health and fitness coach for many midlife women, this is a subject that I have wanted to cover for a while. And so I'm just so stoked that you're here to do that with me.
Yeah, it's a big thing that I don't think is being talked about enough, and I'm thrilled to be here to do this with you.
All right, so I want to start with a piece of information that you shared with me recently that just blew my freaking mind. And that is women in midlife are the fastest growing segment of binge drinkers. And I have so much that I want to say about this, but let's just start with what is a binge drinker?
I know I always thought it was just something that happened on college campuses. First of all, there is no amount of alcohol that is safe for you. The World Health Organization has made that statement. There is no amount that is safe. But we have these guidelines that say if you are drinking 3 or more drinks a day or more than 7 drinks a week, that is binge drinking. 5 ounces of wine is 1 drink, which is nothing, really, when you think of a wine glass. So that's the definition of binge drinking. And I think a lot of people fall into that category without even really being aware of it because it's so normalized to come home from work and have 2 or 3 glasses of wine and more on the weekend. That's just what you need to do through modern life. So I think that we don't even know that binge drinking is a thing that happens in midlife. You think it's kids on campus, it's high school parties, it's those kinds of things. And by the time we get to midlife, we know better, so we don't do those things, but we are doing that and indulging in that without even being aware of it.
Oh, yeah. When coaching health and fitness, people want to do something good with their morning routine. And so I always say that morning routine begins the night before. So what are you doing the night before? And inevitably, it's some conversation about, well, I come home from work, I'm stressed out to the max, and I've got all this stuff that I've got to do at home. And so I have a glass of wine or 2 to unwind. And I'm like, okay, all right. How often? Every day. Okay, this is why I'm so glad we're talking about it, is that's really normalized to some degree. They look out at the landscape of their friends and people in their peer group and age group, and that seems really normal. But by definition, it's a problematic behavior. So that statistic that you shared both blew my freaking mind and at the same time was not at all shocking to me considering how many women I speak to every week. So how did we get here? Why are women in midlife drinking so much?
There's lots of reasons. Drinking increased 40% amongst women during the pandemic. So that was one recent increase in drinking behavior. But I think a lot of it is because it's a coping strategy and it's a socially acceptable coping strategy. And it's a coping strategy that's been modeled for us, or that's what you do as an adult. We saw our parents. We are Gen X. We grew up with no other appropriate ways to deal with emotions or talk about emotions, or you just didn't do that stuff. I think that we have had these broken coping strategies, broken systems. I think sometimes, again, being a Gen Xer, we were the generation that told we can have it all. And we're in this space where it's like, this is it. This is what we have. And I don't want to get into politics, but when you look at where we are culturally and politically, this is the thing we were promised. So I think that has affected our drinking. The lack of systemic support for women, childcare, motherhood, and trying to balance a career. There's just no support for doing all these things that we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. And layer then on top of that with midlife women, we have perhaps children, we have career, and then we have aging parents. And so, like, we're sandwiched in between all of this. And at the same time, just expected we're going to figure it out somehow. It makes perfect sense to me why we're looking at midlife women and going, your stress levels are through the roof. We were like, this is women empowerment. Women can be in big jobs. Cool. But the rest of those requirements or expectations of us as women in society, as mothers, as caretakers for aging parents didn't go away. They just got added to the pile. And I feel like women are at such a disadvantage because if women who are in their 40s have, quote, done everything right, they are totally overwhelmed by their life right now because they have the children, they have the job, they're taking care of everybody, their community service, they have the friends, PTA, and like, whoa, something's got to give. So it's not shocking to me when my clients tell me that when they come home, the first thing they need to do is drink a glass of wine. They're at critical mass throughout the day.
Yeah. And then I think also there's that idea that our nervous systems don't get a chance to rest anymore. And I think a lot of that is the constant bombardment of social media and just media in general, of always being able to turn on MSNBC or Fox News or whatever it is that you're watching, and then watching Growly. Our nervous systems don't have that place to rest.
Yeah.
So for a lot of us, it's like the safest thing to do might be just to have that glass or two or three of wine because we just need to numb at the end of our day. And it's so detrimental to our mental health because then you're just stuck in that vicious circle. But a lot of women don't know what else to do.
Yeah. We weren't given many alternative coping strategies. It's eating or it's drinking. And both of those things not only affect your overall health and wellness, but they also have a huge impact on your mental health and on your confidence and your ability to follow through on your goals. So we have these women who are very high achieving in every area of their life. And then when it comes to their mental health or their physical health, those things are falling apart because they do everything for everybody all day long and they have nothing left for themselves. And when they're finally have that moment of quiet at the end of the night, they can't handle the discomfort, the anger, the rage, and the stress. Their nervous system is so jacked that it doesn't seem like a great option to go exercise. They'd rather numb out those feelings. We are expected to be everything to everyone. And at some point, we just can't handle that kind of pressure. And so there's this leaning on behaviors like emotional eating or drinking that can certainly be a problem. And what's interesting is that all of my life, and certainly as I've gotten older and as I approached sobriety, what I really started to notice was how women are marketed to. Like, alcohol is part of the luxury lifestyle and it's important for having a good time. And if you want to unwind at the end of the day, alcohol is naturally part of.
Yeah, it's that whole rise of the money wine culture. I don't know exactly what decade that would have happened in, probably the early 2000s. I want to say like when I was first having my first child, the early 2000s. I think that started to be that 3-martini play date, that funny vodka in a sippy cup. There was the money wars were going on at that time. There was just a lot of that conversation of like, what does it mean to be a mother? And I think sometimes when you're losing your identity, maybe you do also grab onto alcohol as being like the cool mom, the fun mom. Look at me. I'm still the party girl. And it's not doing you any favors. But again, it just is such a part of our culture. And yes, we are targeted that way. And when you do look back, alcohol sales were down for women. So how do we get back? Let's make bubblegum flavored vodka. Let's make skinny margaritas. Let's do these things so that women can start buying more alcohol and then we'll all be happy. Big alcohol will be happy. Whereas women slowly starting to crumble inside because that is how alcohol makes you feel. Like it starts out fun and fresh and then there's just that dark side where your sense of self-worth, your identity, your just everything is just a mess inside.
Yeah. And it's sold as self-care at the end of the day. It's a treat that you've earned. And this is how you treat yourself. This is how you unwind. And what I see is, yes, in the short term, that is a coping strategy. It is effectively is numbing out those uncomfortable feelings. But in the long run, there's two problems. Number one, it's masking an issue that needs to be dealt with. And that can prolong the mental health struggle that women are dealing with because the numbing out isn't actually addressing the underlying anxiety, depression, boundary issues, whatever the case may be. And then the second piece of that, too, is that in the short term, yes, it works to numb out difficult emotions and manage the intensity of the emotions that you're feeling, but it sabotages your goals in the long run. So it may be self-care in the short term, that may be what you're going for, but in the long term, when you can't sleep, when your energy is low the next day, then you're making poor food choices, you don't have the energy to exercise, you don't have the energy to take care of yourself, that it's just a snowball effect where the thing that you were seeking in the beginning, that short-term self-care, is actually to the detriment of your wider mental health, physical health, and wellness. And that's the real shame here, is that you think you're managing this issue, and really what you're doing is creating 50 other issues along the way. Let's digress here and talk about how the body actually processes alcohol. So humans get their energy for all of our internal biological functions from the things that we eat. So primarily carbs, fat. And then when you eat enough carbs, when you eat enough fat to take care of your immediate energy needs, so the immediate need of your brain to keep functioning and your heart and your lungs and your muscles to keep moving, all of the excess is then stored in your body for later. So you have this sustained energy throughout the day. Your body creates and regulates its own reserve tank of energy so that you can function and not literally need to be eating all day long. So it's an ingenious design in the way that our system was created. Alcohol, however, interferes with this process. And that's because alcohol is perceived by your body as a toxic threat. So alcohol metabolism is going to take precedence over all other energy providing carb and fat stores. So when you drink, your body is essentially halting carb and fat metabolism in order to get rid of the threat of alcohol. So while your body is metabolizing alcohol, which it's programmed to do first because it's a low-level form of poison, it will not be burning carbs or fat for energy. It will store them away instead. And then essentially during that time period, your brain, your vital organs, your muscles, and the rest of your body are temporarily being starved of the energy that they need in order to function until your body gets rid of the alcohol. So I know that for a long time, there was this study that said that a glass of wine every night has health benefits and things like that, but it's now been debunked. No level of alcohol is considered to be safe. So we're having a conversation here about midlife women. What's interesting is that we know that alcohol affects women more than men, mostly because we have a lower water content, we have lower enzymes that metabolize alcohol, we have smaller relative body sizes. But older women have an even bigger disadvantage than younger women when it comes to processing alcohol. As we age, we lose water in our bodies, and that means there's less fluid in our bodies to dilute the alcohol. And then on top of that, older women are more likely to be taking prescription meds, which can magnify the toxic effect of alcohol in their organ. And yet, midlife and older women are drinking more than any previous generation, and often using alcohol as a way to numb or cope, to dampen that intensity of the stress. And it can really be masking underlying anxiety and depression, particularly in the menopause transition where those things are more likely to occur, that should be being treated by a mental health professional. Again, prolonging the mental health struggles of many women in this age group.
Yeah, it's not true. Alcohol is a group 1 carcinogen. It's like tobacco and asbestos. When you get into the chemical, that's what it is. It's not something that we need to be putting in our bodies. And I think we're just so misled by big alcohol and what's perceived we need in our life to have fun, to loosen up, to be an adult. I guess at least if you have that information, then you can make a conscious, intentional choice. You can be like, okay, you know what, I get it, but I'm still choosing to do this. I think the scarier part is that I see women in grocery stores looking at every ingredient in the box of cereal, but they have 5 bottles of wine in their cart because they don't know that is just as bad as certain ingredients in your food. I think is so frustrating.
That's such a good point because with the clients that I work with, they are really fixated on a lot of things and particularly what they're putting in their bodies, or they want clean makeup or things like that. There's this movement towards clean everything, whatever that means. But one thing is really very clear is that alcohol is not in any way clean. It's something that your body can handle. Yes, your body is not that fragile, but it is at a cost. It is as an expense. And that is the part that is difficult and frustrating when working with women is that whenever they come to this place where they want to have a conversation about alcohol and how it's affecting their life, and I tell them what we know about alcohol from a scientific research perspective, and their minds are just blown. They had no idea that we knew all of this stuff. They've been very much misled and been misinformed on the effects alcohol are having on their body. And that means you're not making an informed choice. You're not making an educated choice. You're just doing it because you think you're expected to, or you think it's the way to unwind, or you think it's been normalized. It's not really a conscious choice that you're making for yourself, where you're weighing the risks and the benefits for your specific lifestyle. Because alcohol, for a lot of people, is going to pose more risks than benefits, even in low doses. That myth that some amount of alcohol can be healthy is something that we know now is actually not true. We're talking about women who are potentially dealing with symptoms related to perimenopause and into postmenopause. So really important here to come back to a couple of things. And that is that the low to moderate consumption is linked. Again, this is particularly relevant for this population of women, is linked to reduced REM sleep, so poor sleep quality, and then potentially on the long-term side, more rapid cognitive decline and increased risk of neurodegeneration. So your brain health is at risk. As you mentioned, it has an increased risk for many types of cancer. Increased hot flashes during perimenopause, which can further disrupt your sleep and lead to a cascade of other issues. If you're sleep deprived, everything in life is more difficult. And then it has an increased chance for hormonal disruptions that can worsen menopausal symptoms, reduced bone mineral density, really important for this population, and then reduced exercise recovery and an inhibition of training adaptations. So your training becomes less effective.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot, right?
Yes. These are all things that even women who aren't drinkers, I'm working diligently with to help them manage these risks that they're facing at this time of life. And a lot of them are just unaware that they're prolonging their struggles by drinking alcohol. So 5 to 7 drinks is considered moderate consumption per week. And that may sound like a lot because at first thought, when you're like 7 drinks, I'm like, that's a lot of drinks. But as you mentioned, what most people put in their glass is more than a standard drink according to that definition. So it's not just as much alcohol as you can fit in a glass. There are actual like parameters around what constitutes a drink, and it's fluid ounces based on percentage alcohol by volume. So depending on which type, whether you're drinking beer or malt liquor or wine or distilled spirits, there's a different serving size that constitutes a standard drink. It's not just what you can fit into a glass.
2 glasses of wine a night is a pretty standard, and also no shame because I was in that place. This is my story, so no shame. But yeah, 2 glasses of wine a night is considered pretty normal. And then a little bit more on the weekend because it's the weekend. And so before you know it, you can really be ramping up those drink. And statistically, if you are a daily drinker, your needs are just going to increase. And then there comes that point when you might not have that choice to get sober or to explore your relationship with alcohol because it's court mandated rehab or it's your third DUI or it's somebody else saying, your doctor saying you need to stop drinking immediately, because it is that slippery slope where you need more and more. So I think that just having that intention and creating that space in your life, this is something to explore just the way you explore anything else that's impacting your health, and making, like a real conscious choice to be like, this is not supporting the life that I want to create, especially with the women that you're working with, women who are focused on their health. They have big fitness goals, adventure goals. They want to be out doing things. And this is the thing that's not helping them create and support themselves in those environments.
Yeah. It's this behavior that, whether they know it or not, is really out of alignment with their goals and what they're trying to do in life. And as health and fitness coach, as a sobriety coach, that's what we're here for. Because, right, no shame, right? We know why women have been put in this position. Hey, you. I wanted to press pause on this episode for a second to talk about your fitness goals. You know, those sweet dreams of being more active and feeling athletic and confident and doing epic, adventurous shit. Or maybe you just feel like you're getting older, because we're all getting older. And you, like me, never want to give up on carrying all the groceries into the house in one shot, or picking up that heavy Amazon box without worrying that you're going to throw your back out. I know you're busy. You're probably listening to this episode while multitasking. Oh yeah, I'm on to you. And the biggest thing that's stopping you from getting strong and fit is knowing how to use your workout time most effectively. Like exactly which exercises are worth your time, when to do them, and the number of sets and reps to get to your goals. You probably also tried other fitness apps and programs out there, only to feel like they weren't right for your needs. You want a program that has it all: strength, power, cardio, mobility, and recovery, all built right in without spending your whole life in the gym. And you want experienced coaches around to answer your questions, and a community at your back to help you stay motivated and inspired. Look, I've been coaching women for a long time now, and the truth is that you don't need another fad diet or complicated, time-consuming workout routine to support you as you age. You just need to train smarter with simple, progressive workouts and a plan that's designed for your body and your life, whether you're navigating motherhood, midlife, or menopause. And if this sounds like exactly what you've been missing, I invite you to join Stronger 365, a progressive strength, power, and conditioning training membership for women like you who are ready to stop winging it and take their training to the next level with more structure and support. And the best part? This program has 3 different options, so you can choose your own fitness adventure based on your goals, how much time you have to train, and what equipment you have, whether you've got access to a full gym or, like me, work out at home. And it's run by me, Allison Heilig, and my awesome team at Miles to Go Athletics. Head over to the show notes for all the details and to join our membership community. And as an FBG, your first 2 weeks are on me. And now, let's get back to the episode. You mentioned your personal story, that you've been there. So tell me about what led you to pursue sobriety.
I have a history of alcoholism in my family. A lot of us do. We're carrying that trauma, that unhealed trauma around. So that was a part of it. But really, I was working with a health coach. It was after my divorce. My drinking had ramped up a bit, especially when my kids were at their dad's, because I was bored. I was lonely. I didn't know what else to do. I was trying to calm my nervous system and numb and do a lot of these things that we've been talking about. And a health coach randomly, she did not know, because of course I'm not telling her exactly what is happening in my body, because why would I be honest with the health coach that I hired to work with? I had gained some weight. I knew my workouts were not as good as they used to be. And she just randomly mentioned that she herself had given up alcohol for a year and how much better she felt. And she's like, why don't you just try it for 30 days? And I had just come off a really crazy girls weekend of doing the wineries and the distilleries, the breweries. We did this big tour, and she just spoke to me at the right time. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to give it 30 days. And I think 30 days after that, I was supposed to be going to Mexico with some friends for an all-inclusive. So I was like, great, I'll just detox for these 30 days. Perfect. But about 5 or 6 days into it, I felt so clear mentally. I was having better sleep. My body was just starting to heal. I was like, you know what? I think I want to feel this way forever. And luckily, I had some good friends who had been sober for decades, who just very gently took me in and supported me. And I was just at the start of the real big explosion in sober curious, that whole movement, and the books that were coming out and the podcasts. And I just felt so much more like myself than I ever had when I was drinking. And I think I just wanted to keep exploring that and building on that. And here I am almost 7 years later. And was it easy? Not always at the start. Of course, you are still fighting cravings, whether they're real or imagined, or you're still fighting that social. But I know that's not a thing I want to have in my life anymore. And I was lucky. I got to make a choice. A lot of women end up not being able to make that choice because it's taken away from them. But was an early exiter and have just never felt better in my life. I just turned 55. I feel super strong. I feel super confident. I feel like mentally, physically, emotionally, I know what to do when things aren't working out. And this is a huge shift because before, like, alcohol was the Swiss Army knife of everything, right? It fixed everything, but it was fixing nothing all at the same times.
Yeah, I gave up alcohol the month before the pandemic. Obviously, I did not have the ability to see the future. I got to this place where I was starting to feel that I was relying on alcohol too much to manage the intensity of my life. I'm a high intensity lifestyle. I run a business, now a business that's just grown, and I am an ultra runner and a weightlifter, and I love to do all the stuff and all the things. And the pressure and the intensity of my life, in order for me to be able to come down from that and unwind and relax at the end of the night, I felt like I needed some suppression of the intensity. So I was leaning towards alcohol as well. And I probably fit into the low to moderate consumption. I don't think that at any point during that time leading up to it that I had exceeded 7 drinks a week, but it was enough to notice that, hey, I only have one coping strategy and it doesn't really seem to be getting better for me because I come home and if I'm amped up, I go straight for the fridge. I don't have any other tricks up my sleeve. It's just this one thing. It made my sleep terrible. I would wake up in the middle of the night when I was sobered up and my blood sugar was low because my body had halted carb metabolism. And so I would feel that dip and I would wake up and be wide awake. And so my sleep was suffering. And then my energy the next day was suffering. And so the question, maybe I should just take a little bit of time where I'm not drinking. And so that's what I did. I had no intention of it being like permanent or I'm going to be sober. It was just like, I need a break from alcohol for a while. And then the pandemic started and I was never more grateful that I had given up alcohol because I could see what was happening in the world around me with my clients and with my peer group where it was sourdough bread and wine, right? We were just coping however we could cope. And I was really glad that I didn't, and it was hard. It's not all rainbows and butterflies. It was difficult whenever I actually had to sit with the discomfort and the uncomfortable emotions that I was feeling and find other outlets and ways of dealing with them. It was not as simple as pour a glass of wine and dump it down. But at the end of it, here I am 5 years later, or will be 5 years in February, where I don't miss it. I don't miss anything that it did for me. I don't miss who I was. I don't miss feeling helpless when the intensity of life went up. And on the flip side, I also went into therapy. I was going through perimenopause. And for me, that meant really increased anxiety and depression. So I'm on medication for that. And I've learned so many more coping skills along the way that I don't feel like I want a drink ever. There's a confidence in me that like when something comes up, I'm not going to love it, but I'll be able to handle it and it will have better long-term outcomes than downing a couple glasses of wine in the moment.
I love that so much. And I think what's so important about your story is that you talked about it, the story, you were a low to moderate drinker. And I think a lot of the shame and the stigma and the stuff that comes around with talking about alcohol is that you're cracking open a beer in the morning or hiding vodka in the linen closet, or you'll have to hit this really terrible rock bottom. But you don't. You get to, as a individual, decide when enough is enough, when it's not working for you. You get to make that decision, nobody else. And I love that was a piece of your story because I think that is just such the myth. You have to wait until you lose everything and then go get help. But if it is not making you feel good, if it's not working for you, you get to question that at any time. So I love that about your story.
What I realized is your alcohol doesn't need to have hit a quote unquote problematic threshold for it to be a problem, right? And for me, it was a problem. It did not clear the threshold of raging alcoholic or anything along those lines. And my life was not being destroyed by alcohol in any way that was visible from the outside. But to me, it was not in alignment with the person that I wanted to be and the way that I wanted to approach my life. And it was standing in the way of a lot of my goals. And once you navigate those initial barriers of like how to go out with friends and be around a group of friends that traditionally alcohol was a big part of that time together, like how do you navigate that? Those are some things that you need to work through. But in the long run, you said it was only a couple of days in. It was for me too. Like immediately, it's not something I needed to wait until I was 70 to be glad that I made this choice. I was glad I made this choice really early on.
It's so true. Yeah, it's amazing. It was just like a veil had been lifted, like the bubble wrap had come off, which also, yeah, of course, you're feeling all the good stuff and all the bad stuff. But like you said, there's lots of other coping strategies to use. There's lots of ways to process your emotions that are so much healthier and then will, in the long term, make things easier for you because you are dealing with things in real time, or you're having those difficult conversations, or you're believing in yourself a little bit more, or whatever it is. And I think that just giving yourself that space to experiment with it can be so important because it doesn't have to mean anything. And if your friend has a problem with it, or if your partner is like, why not drinking? That's their issue. You have to just let them deal with that. And it's so funny because alcohol is the only substance that you have to justify quitting. If you told your friend, like, hey, I'm not going to have sugar anymore, or I'm not going to do crystal meth anymore, they will be like, great. But if you say you're not going to drink, it brings up so much stuff. And it's just so interesting because that just shows you, I think, how deeply embedded it is in our culture and how it's an individual flaw if you don't want to be drinking anymore. Like, it's not the substance, it's the user. Like, oh, I guess you're not a normal drinker, or all that language and baggage that comes around with it. And it's so ridiculous because it's you making a healthy, conscious choice not to put poison in your body. That's what it comes down to. So,
Like recognizing that the risks it poses are not worth the rewards you're getting from it. It's just like a relationship. If you're in a relationship with somebody and you are giving them everything and they are giving you nothing in return, that's a terrible relationship. You wouldn't want to stay in that. You would not advocate that your best friend hang out for that. So it is something that when we position it as a relationship with alcohol, it's just like a relationship with food, a relationship with money, a relationship with another person. If we give it that feeling of it being a give take, then people are evaluating it differently. Is this thing benefiting me in any real way? And what is it costing me along the way? That should be part of everything that you're giving a piece of yourself to, or you're spending your resources on. When I say resources, I don't just mean money, I mean time. If you're spending your time indulging in alcohol, is it giving you enough of a reward to justify or to reconcile against those risks? And is it leading you closer to your goals? Or is it leading you farther away? For me, that was the deciding line, was like, it's making it harder for me to do the things that I need to do to be healthy. And when we stripped alcohol and its numbing effect away, what I realized is I actually have anxiety and I should just get that treated. Right. And then when I got it treated, yes, I went on another substance. I took a medication for it. But now I'm talking about a relationship that is much healthier for me, is that the side effects of my anti-anxiety meds are worth the trade-off that I'm making to take them. They're not interfering with my ability to sleep. They're not interfering with my ability to make healthy food choices. They're not chiseling away at my goals and my ability to meet those goals. They're actually enhancing my ability to meet those goals. If what you are masking with alcohol is anxiety and depression, there are other ways to manage those things that are not as risky as alcohol.
yeah, no, it's absolutely, that's a great point. And for a lot of women, that is probably the most consistent relationship they'd had in their life, is their relationship with alcohol. It's been present in a lot of our lives, early teens, late teens. And yeah, it gets to a point, I think, when the benefits are just not there anymore, if they even ever were there. I think that's one of the most exciting things that happens when I do work with clients and I see them start to do these things, get through hard places, do amazing things without having that liquid courage or whatever they think the thing is. It's like, no, it's always been you.
Yeah.
You've just been masking it with this substance. So I love that.
Yeah. So I want to dig into your expertise a little bit here to give people some good takeaways from this conversation. What are some of the signs that it might be time to renegotiate your relationship to alcohol?
The big sign is if you're Googling how much is too much to drink. Often I Google that with a glass of wine in my hand, like how much is too much to drink? And,
Yeah.
or if you're taking the quizzes online, or if your sleep is constantly disrupted, or if you are on the couch more nights than not, drinking 2 or 3 glasses of wine and just knowing, that there's no shame in that. That has been modeled. That has been your strategy. That's the thing you've been doing. So it's not coming to it with shame, but just, is this thing interfering in my life? And is it interfering in my relationship with myself, my kids, my partner, my community, all these things? How is it impacting me? And I do really feel, honestly, if you listen to your gut deep down, that your alcohol's probably not doing good things for you in your life. You probably are drinking too much. I think we all know that deep down if we really listen to our gut. I think that can just be some signs that you are ready to explore your relationship with alcohol.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by coping strategies because, like, human beings are just rad. Our bodies, our physiology, we are capable of surviving, enduring, resilience. It's fascinating to me. And so, coping strategies in and of themselves, not a bad thing. They're actually a really remarkable, awesome quality that we have that in the short term, we are able to find a way to navigate very difficult circumstances. But as with everything, it's about the dose. If you are to a place where you're not coping anymore, you're living like this. This is your
Yeah.
survival strategy every day of your life. So what's working in the short term might then suddenly become a liability in the long term. So it may have worked for you. You may feel like it's worked for you a lot in your life. And like you said, no shame, because coping strategies are awesome and amazing. And I'm glad that we as humans have them. Otherwise, we would all be crushed by things all the time.
Right. We wouldn't get out of bed.
Yeah, what works for you in one situation or at one point in your life or over a short period of time isn't necessarily going to translate to something that works for you in the long term. So just be questioning those behaviors. How do I cope with stress? Is it still working for me? Or is it creating more issues than it's really helping? We keep doing the same thing, expecting this result to come of it. And
Right.
we're just completely not paying attention to the fact that the reason why we started doing this was to create X outcome. And now it's not even giving us that anymore. We're just autopiloting it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, advice for women who are sober curious, because going from drinking low to moderate or even more than moderate alcohol to nothing can feel like a big jump. So, what advice do you give women who are in a place where they're ready to explore potentially being sober?
Yeah, I think a good way to do it is to set a 30-day goal for not drinking. Obviously, clearly reaching out to a sobriety coach or joining a support program or doing something like that can also be a benefit. But I think if you just really want to get sober curious, is try not drinking for 30 days and see what that feels like. See how your body's reacting. See if you can do it, because sometimes it's hard to do and you're like, I can't make it through 2 weeks. That can just be a sign that you're like, hey, maybe I do need some professional help. Talk to a therapist, work with a coach, get some support if this is really truly a thing that you want to do. There's so much equipment out there, stories of women who you can maybe see yourself reflected in or not. But I think that that can be a way, is to attach yourself to other women's stories and be like, hey, I'm not the only person that's gone through this or is dealing with this, or and just that way to connect with others. And then I would say talk to, I don't know if your doctor is always the right place to start, but I think talking to people who are working in the sober space can really be a starting point. A health coach, that's the conversation I first had. I offer a free 30-minute call, and it's just to explore, is this a thing that you have? What does this look like if we work together? How is alcohol showing up in your life? even just sitting and reflecting on some of those questions. We've talked about a lot of those questions in this episode. So I think maybe going back even and journaling about some of those things. What pieces of this conversation are making you feel really sticky? Which pieces are exciting you? Just get really curious about it. Because I think at the end of the day, that's all it is. It's just you being curious about what you're putting in the body.
Yeah.
And not making it mean anything more than that. Getting rid of any shame or judgment or whatever you're putting on yourself. Know that there's a whole world out there that there is no shame and judgment in looking at that.
Yeah. Yeah. That non-judgmental awareness of how your behaviors or your actions are affecting your life is a really common thread in all areas of health and fitness that's not specific to sobriety and mental health specifically. It's like we have to be able to have compassion for the version of us that needed to use those coping strategies and that person was doing the best that they could under the circumstances. And if you can learn to have compassion rather than shame for that version of you that was in that position, from that point, you can move forward. You can start to see, okay, that version of me found this to be really effective. That's great. But now moving forward, do I even want this to be a part of my life anymore? I'm just getting curious about what is the impact it's even having on my life. If you're not even sure what that is, I think if you're not able to brainstorm that on your own, having somebody to guide you through that curiosity, like your 30-minute call, could be really helpful. Is this even a problem for me? Let's figure it out in a space that's not always filled with shame. That we're just curious. We're just talking. We're just having a conversation.
Absolutely.
I'm really hoping that more and more people start to talk about this and have these conversations, because working with the population and seeing how much it's sabotaging people. I think a lot of people know that their emotional eating might be a problem in their life, whether they do something about it or not. But this is adjacent. This is still, in a lot of times, is serving the same purpose as emotional eating. It's a numbing, it's a coping strategy, and that can really be a way to sabotage your whole life. So thank you so much for being here to have this conversation with me and to share your experience and your expertise. It's really been so helpful.
It's great. I love it. I could talk about it all day.
So people can find you on your website, your Instagram, and your Facebook, all of which I'm going to link to in the show notes so that people can find you easily. And then real quick, your bread and butter is your one-on-one coaching. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that and who would be a good fit for it?
Yeah, so it's one-on-one coaching. We meet once a week on Zoom. It is a lot of accountability is what I offer. I don't have a checklist that we go through. I don't have a step-by-step program because everybody's journey is different and everybody's starting in a very different place. So it's a lot of just talking and getting to know each other. And then I also use a lot of creativity in the work I do as an alternative coping strategy because that was a big piece of my recovery and still is. And sometimes that creativity word can freak people out a bit, but it's a completely low stress, no structured, easily accessible way that I show you just to start to process some of that stuff. Because when you take away, like you rip the Band-Aid off, it's like, what do I do with all these feelings? I teach you how to put it into a sketchbook and process it and use that as a way to rebuild and recover and release all the things that you're going through. Then I also offer unlimited email boxer support in between our sessions because stuff comes up, things happen, you get invited out, you get something, you don't get that job promotion. It's like, oh, what do I do? There's just that support that I offer as well. Yeah, I work with women all over the gray area drinking spectrum. Like drinking is really a spectrum. It's not a continuum. It's not either or. So wherever you are, whatever place you're in, those are women that I work with. So it's up to you to decide. You get to make that decision. Hey, I don't want to put this in my body anymore, but I think I need some help and support. Or maybe you tried it on your own before. Maybe you've done a dry January or a sober October and it was great and you loved it, but you never felt better. And then February 1st, you're back to drinking. And that again is just like data. That's information. That's not a failure in any way. So working with a sober coach that can help you have that extra layer of the stuff you need to get through the first and I usually work with 3-month blocks. It's usually, by the end of 90 days, I feel like most women I work with had a pretty solid foundation to get out there and continue on their own.
Yeah. And as with all coaching, we look at the behavior change science and we know how important environment and support and accountability and systems and strategies are to long-term success. And if you are a person who's navigating something for the first time, you can't be expected to know the systems, the strategies, fully support yourself, or know what to change about your environment to really facilitate that long-term behavior change. As with coaching of any capacity, it's not the cookie cutter. Here's the workout plan and the things you will eat and the way that you will get sober. Coaches are there to help you navigate the things as they come up in your real life so that you actually develop the skills to be able to maintain it long term. That's why the 30-day challenges don't work in workouts, in food, in diets, in sobriety. They're great. They give you a snapshot of something, but they didn't actually teach you the skills for how to make this a long-term change. So it's not a failure if that didn't stick. You didn't learn how to make it work long-term. And that's where a coach can really be super valuable. Awesome. So this was so great. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for opening up and doing it. I love it. Yeah.
And that's a wrap for this week's episode of the Fit Bottom Girls podcast. But don't worry, we're dropping new episodes every Thursday. In the meantime, head over to the show notes for all the links from today's episode, or go to fitbottomedgirls.com/podcast to catch up on past episodes. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next week.